Okay, so I was waiting for the Six Nations to be out of the way to get stuck into this. Lots of law tinkering in 2024 and beyond. Let's get into it because I love to know your thoughts on this thing, and there's lots of juicy stuff to get stuck into. And I think first up we have to say that part of the appeal of rugby is the fact it's very complex. I've always liked games with complex rules. You could say it doesn't attract the masses that way, and that is an argument, making it simpler to attract more people, but then the complexity is part of the attraction as well, so it's a bit of a catch-22 there. But anyway, whatever tinkering you make, within good intentions of course, there's always going to be loopholes and new techniques, so this process will have to carry on going on and on, but I find it quite interesting. So let's get into it. With the World Rugby aims, if they're trying to speed the game up, more ball in play time and more entertaining. And first of all, those seems like really good aims, but there's also some downsides there as well. I mean, more ball in play time means maybe there's going to be more collisions, and part of the reason why World Rugby are changing laws is to reduce collisions, and actually more ball in play means more opportunities for collisions. That's just a cynical way of looking at it, but I am going to put a bit of a cynical eye on these things as a coach maybe, because those are the interesting ways of looking at them. But anyway, it's a good spectacle, a faster game, more ball in play, get more value for money. I understand it, and you do have to look at rugby as a business, but I'd like to know your thoughts on those aims. So let's get into it. The first phase, the application of the current laws, just doing them a bit more. From right now, from the 19th of March, so from before now, they just want stuff quicker. For example, I've seen referees saying we need to get lineouts quicker, less of a huddle. Sure, that all makes sense to me, but who's going to start pinging it? It's all about consistency. You've got to be really brave. Teams don't need to walk in as slow as they do. They don't need huddles. They've been, especially at the top level, they've been practicing for ages. Just get in, call it, go. But you have to be brave to ping it. Okay, so let's get into Rule 15.17. Players will be expected to use the ball more quickly at a ruck, and referees will call it use it earlier. So not when the ball's at the back of the ruck, but when it is just available to be picked up by the scrum half, they say use it, and then they count 5 seconds. Now, this is all very well, but the refs, I think, have to make a visual count, very much like they do in basketball, with 1, 2, like using the arms, actually putting the fingers out, that sort of thing, rather than just something in their head and then all of a sudden they spring it on them. I think it needs to be something they can see happening. So that's going to be interesting. Let me know what you think of that one. If they actually do it, fantastic. And the other thing in this using the ball is I hate it when scrum halves just roll the ball back with their foot. It takes forever, and then the refs call use it at the back. And also sometimes the scrum halves even pick up the ball and put it further back in the ruck. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, players could play that ball. The ball is out. They have played it then, but they don't want to because they don't want to get pinged, because they know refs don't call that as playing the ball, but it is playing the ball. So I think you've got to say to scrum halves, as soon as you pick up that ball, the ball is out. I can't believe they get away with that, where they pick it up and put it further back. Will that get rid of the caterpillar ruck? Well, they'll have to form it a lot quicker, and I think that's the idea. So in essence, yes, fantastic, but again, refs have to be super quick on this, super harsh, and that's what they're saying from the 19th of March. You should be harsh. The hooker's breakfoot, they want to be even harsher in that for more safety at the scrum. And then the water carriers, they want to be more strict on the water carriers entering the field of play. We saw the Neil Jenkins thing, which was pretty unsavoury, didn't like that at all, but water carriers for ages have just been a way of getting messages onto the pitch. I mean, even at a lower level, I used to carry a bottle around with me when I was coaching just so I had an excuse to go on the pitch and talk to players, and at the top level they're bringing on all sorts of messages. So is there a way of having it as an independent thing where it's a water carrier for both sides? I don't know, but yeah, water carriers should just be water, no messages, very quick, that sort of thing. That's great if they can enforce it. Then the second phase, the law amendment recommendations for the 9th of May, they're saying they're going to try and do these new law recommendations. So the recommendation adjustment to Law 10, that's the kicking battle, the Dupont law, which I think makes a lot of sense. That thing where if a player caught the ball and then didn't move, no one could chase, no one could advance on them. So I think they're going to take it back to a more even way, where it's just they have to be put onside by the kicker, trying to dissuade this kick tennis thing. That's a really tricky one, because once you open one, shut one door, another one opens, but let me know what you think about that. And then a biggie, less scrums, or more specifically, if there's a free kick at the scrum, you can't call another scrum. So the big scrummaging sides, they're not going to like it for sure. And if you're a scrummaging fan, you're probably not going to like it. So reducing dead time, is it dead time? That's a good debate as well. But I think it's kind of going the right way. But there's a real cynical way to look at this. If I was a coach with a weak scrummaging side, I would be saying to my team, get a free kick. And you can get free kicks in many ways in the scrum. Even before you engage, you could even walk to the scrum too slowly. It says in the laws that you've got to form within 30 seconds, and you could just dither forever and try and force the ref to give you a free kick, and you're like, oh no, we don't have to scrummage. And they can't call a scrum from that free kick, and they have to run it or kick it. So there's loads of ways to get a free kick on yourself and not have to scrummage and potentially give away a penalty, because penalties from scrums are really costly. So if you're a poor scrummaging team, you would look at this law and say, fantastic, less scrums and we can give away free kicks, and then we're away from that scrum. So that's my cynical eye on it, and I think they'll try and do it. How can they stop teams doing that? I don't know. But anyway, I'd really love to know what you think about that. And then the last one in phase 2 was about the croc roll, which really should be illegal anyway, because in my opinion, I've said this before, but rucking, I think, should be staying on your feet and driving a player away from the breakdown, ideally directly backwards, or certainly slightly to the side maybe, not just flopping on them and rolling them off. Of course, it's to try and stop players getting injured. Horrible knee injuries come from croc rolls. It should have been illegal anyway. I think it is illegal under the laws of rucking, but it's about time. Get rid of that. That's been pretty slow. Then the third phase. This is an experiment, a mass experiment where they're going to try and encourage unions to adopt different law trials. They're going to encourage unions to expand the shot clock, as in reduce the shot clock on scrums, lineouts and kicking time. I think that's absolutely fine as long as there's a clear shot clock. Then a really interesting suggestion, trying to stop the long restart. They want the restart to land between the 10 and the 22, because they're going to say if a restart lands in the 22, the opposition team can just mark it and clear their lines, not under pressure. Because these days, a lot of teams just bang the ball long, get their defensive line up, and then you tend to start a bit of a kicking battle where they're just trying to gain distance from a kick. They're trying to say, go for a short kickoff. It's more contested, it's more exciting, and teams receiving that kickoff could well run from that a lot more than if it was deep. And I think I'm fine with that. Let me know if I'm missing something there. In fact, I think I'd be happy if the law was the restart has to travel 10 metres but no further than the 22. A nice little target to aim for, and it would always be contestable. I'd be super happy with that, but let me know if I'm really missing something there. Then quite a big change suggested for the maul, that the ball has to be used on the first stoppage. That is pretty big, because mauls often grind to a halt, then start going in a different direction. How do you determine where that halt is always a tricky one, but once, not twice. That's a big change. That really depowers the maul. So these suggestions are depowering the scrum and depowering the maul. So that will go against those power teams, and of course South Africa spring to mind. They're not going to be too happy with these suggested changes, I imagine. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that one. I'm kind of on the fence there. Then one about the protection of the 9 at the base of the scrum. More protection. I didn't know they needed it, but let me know if you think they do. Then a really interesting change in the line out, which seems like common sense. If the line out isn't straight, but the opposition hasn't competed, you just play on. Again, that seems like common sense, but thinking as the cynical coach, what do I think coaches would do? I think they would fake a competition. For example, if you're in the 22 and you decide not to compete so you can counter the drive, the maul, what you do is you just say, a guy at the front, just jump up by yourself with your hands up and say, I've competed for the line out. You don't have to be lifted to try and compete for the ball. So maybe you make a bit of a faux attempt at competing for the ball, so you always keep that not straight in play, because it's a really powerful thing to turn over a line out on a not straight. It's a very cheap way of doing it. So always make sure it looks like you're competing even when you're not. So a lot of these common sense things, which I think are the right thing to do. I can think of cynical ways that coaches will try and get around them. Let me know if I'm being too cynical, but in professional rugby, this is exactly what coaches will be doing. They'll be going, how can I keep the not straight still in play? Anyway, then the fourth phase, specialist working groups, which is essentially business speak for blue sky thinking. What could you change? Well, they're thinking of changing the red card. The red card to a 20-minute red card, and then that player gets replaced by someone else, so they can't come back on the pitch, but you're not losing a player for the whole game. I think in essence I kind of agree with this one. I've said about this before, but then does it encourage foul play, or does it encourage more reckless play because you know you're not going to destroy your team's chances for the whole game? So I'm 50-50 on that one. It's going to have to be for certain types of offences, I guess, but I think I'm on the right side of the fence on that one. Let me know what you think. Then into the breakdown, always super contentious. They're looking at the safety of the jackler in the breakdown, thinking of ways of making it safer or reducing it or getting rid of it completely, because head down in a jackling position is a dangerous position where players are coming in to clean you out. They're huge players. Yes, they're trying to stop them, not wrapping and going in with the shoulder, but it's still a really dangerous position. It's exciting, the jackal, it's a good skill. Is the radical thing just to say no jackling at all? I've seen that before. Just say it's too dangerous. What you've got to do instead is counter a ruck. If you were going to do that, I think you could do maybe if you say you can kick the ball again. At the moment, you can only ruck it backwards, which I know is kind of in the idea of rucking, but I quite like kicking the ball. If you manage to get through the middle of the ruck and get to the ball, kick it and disrupt it is fine. So do you get rid of jackling? Do you change it? I don't know. Do you get it when they're presenting the ball that they then have to release the ball and take their hands away to stop this kind of hold-on contest which keeps the jackler in there for longer? There's a few ways to go on this one. It's a really tricky one, but certainly jackling is a dangerous position. Is there anything that is conceivable they could do? I'd love to know your thoughts on that, because I'm sure there's some creative ways. Then trying to streamline the TMO, which always makes sense. And I think what they're saying is more checks in the background, feed it into the ref's ear. So then if they have to go to the screen, if you like, the TMO's already reviewed it before. They pretty much know what the ref needs to do, and they only need to see it once or twice just to confirm that. And it's all a bit quicker. So that makes sense as long as it is streamlined and it does happen consistently, of course. The old replacements thing, the impact of fatigue and the number and timing of replacements. At the moment you're just changing whole front rows. You can have these big boppers who go around for 50 minutes and then just come off. Less replacement seems a clear suggestion to make the game quicker, to make players, dare I say, lose a bit of body fat, become more athletic, so there's more exciting play. And maybe you get more back rows who have to be trained as hookers, or more props that can prop both sides, more versatility, less players on the bench, or even you go radical. I did suggest tongue-in-cheek once in a video to go down to 14 players, just full stop instead of 15, but that was a bit more radical. But there's definitely a place for less replacements. That is an argument. Let me know if you think that is a goer. Then there was a really interesting section on fan experience, definitely making the game more interactive for fans. I think is a great way to go. Everyone's got a smartphone, you've got Wi-Fi in stadiums, surely you could get an app and get things like interactive replays, ref link on your phone, votes on your phone, highlights coming through at half-time, stuff like that, competitions. I'm sure there's good things you could do there. Making the game more exciting is always good. And then the tackle height. We had tackle height come in the community game in the UK. Fascinating to know what your experience of it was. They want feedback on it, and do they start bringing in changes to tackle height in the elite game? And then the last couple that I saw talked about by refs in World Rugby were about the deliberate knock-on and the normal knock-on, saying now that one hand doesn't automatically mean it's deliberate. And I've discussed this in the past. Your natural biomechanics mean you reach for a ball with one hand, it keeps you more balanced. Reaching with two is possible, but it's not the most natural balanced position. So I agree with that. And whether the ball goes up or down isn't necessarily dictating whether you're going for the ball properly or not. So I think a bit more discretion in that area is good. And also a bit more discretion on hands on the floor doesn't automatically mean you're not supporting your weight, especially when the ball is buried in amongst bodies or someone's holding onto the ball. Just because your hands are on the floor doesn't mean you're not supporting your weight, although it might. So again, a little bit more interpretation there, but of course it makes it a bit harder for the refs not having that hard and fast rule. Whoa, that was a lot of interesting changes there, interesting suggestions for laws. I think rugby's trying to do the right thing, but like I said, there's so many loopholes. When you change one thing, something else comes along. It's going to be the way forever, but it is interesting to talk about. Is it going to make a better game? Well, I hope so. That's the way we're trying to go. I try and stay positive on these things, but love to know your interpretation on what the impact of all these changes might be. All those comments below. As always, if you like these sorts of videos, please do feel free to subscribe to the channel. Do like the video, that always helps, and I'll catch you next time.